The What It Takes Radio Company, we're proud to present a premier program entitled The Transformation Project Podcast. And today, I Can Fly. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is Stan, the radio man, and I'm with my colleague Joe Pine, are putting together what we call the Transformation Project in both a radio and video podcast performance, because we want to bring you stories of people who have gone, are going, or are discovering that life can be changed in significant ways. Sometimes for good, sometimes not so good, and sometimes quite badly, but it all turns out to be maybe from bad to blessing. So I have a gentleman today who has quite a story. So Sandy, you're on, and you just start telling people the story of here you are, ready to have a significant career, and boom, you're on, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you, Stan. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story as it is today. So I guess my story starts when I was a really young kid, and all I could think about, I would have this obsession with flying. And I'd have dreams of kind of floating and never coming back, to the earth, and feeling how amazing that was. And one day I was watching a video, Come Fly With Me, with Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan said, I can fly. Might be for a brief moment, but I can fly. And that just hit me that that's what I wanted to do. And for the next several years, I became obsessed with this idea of being able to fly myself. And I would do everything I could to train my legs, jump around. I had 14 stairs that went from my lower level in my house as I was growing up to our main floor. And every night before bed, I would do 100 toe raises on every step. So 1,400 toe raises before I would go to bed. And then I would go to bed and just think about, one day I'm going to fly. And fast forward a few years, I was in high school. I had made this traveling team from Colorado, which wasn't known as a real basketball state at the time. And we traveled around. We ended up winning the national championship in Long Beach. I'd entered some dunk contests. I started to realize that this was something I had now become very good at, very gifted at. And I found myself in Lubbock, Texas. We were in another tournament, and there was an individual national slam dunk contest, which I entered in with the insistence from my teammates, and I ended up winning and crowned the national slam dunk champion for the U.S. At the time. And it was just an amazing feeling. Not only had we as a team won the national championship, I was now being crowned as the national slam dunk champion. I went back to high school that summer, continued to train on jumping, and without even going or attending many track practices, I ended up high jumping over 7 feet, winning the state championship. And lo and behold, here I was, I could fly. That helped me to get a full ride scholarship to the University of Colorado, play basketball for 4 years. I was a starter on that team for 4 years, having an amazing time. We were in the Big 8 conference, probably the best basketball conference at that time. And I had an opportunity now to go down to Brazil after I graduated and play professional basketball. Unfortunately, or fortunately, some intervention happened where I decided October 16th, 1995, I was going to go backcountry skiing because I was a Colorado kid. That's what we did. I hiked the Continental Divide, skied down, and unfortunately I blew my knee out, my ACL and MCL, and it just all flashed in front of me that, basketball and this idea of flying, it might be time to be grounded for a while, and you might have to go and enter the workforce, which I'd never really thought that much about. I'd been so obsessed with everything that I was doing, the direction my life was heading. This kind of forced me to think, what now? So I went back to kind of the only thing I really knew at the time. I knew I wanted to be successful, and I knew I wanted to make a lot of money. Not really the best set of goals, but those were my goals. And the only thing I really knew at the time was find the biggest company you could join where you had the opportunity to make money, um, and do it the way you did athletics. Size up the competition, outwork everybody, get recognized, and move your way up. And so I did that for the better part of 3 decades. And then, and my whole focus was really on our kids, getting them a great launching pad, and thinking this was the way for me to go about doing that. And I think it served me quite well for that season of my life. But as they went off to college, as they had this great foundation, I started to look at myself and say, was this it? Is this what I was brought here to do? Have I maximized my full potential? Or is there something more here that I'm still left to discover? And there was something in my own gut saying, there's a lot more. We don't know what it is, but let's find out. And so I happened to start with the body, and I really changed and cleaned up my diet, just kind of instinctively, if you will. I got onto an intermittent fasting regimen, and just without trying to lose a lot of weight, I lost 25 pounds. Then I started to get a series of headaches that I didn't know where they were coming from. And they were migraine headaches that would put me in my bed for the better part of a day, blacked out room, cold washcloth on my face. And I didn't really know where these were coming from. And I remember one day after New Year's Eve, I was on the couch, decided to have a beer watching football, and bam, another headache. Same thing happened the next day. I went to the doctors and tried to figure out what was going on. They had no idea what was going on. Through the process of elimination, they scheduled a CT scan. I said, we have to at least eliminate that something more major is not going on here. And I remember going to the test, having it done, and coming home and thinking, it felt like there was like a 50-50 chance something more major was wrong. Why am I feeling this idea that maybe there's more to life? Is this that the finish line is so near that I have to cram and get a bunch done because I'm going to get some really bad news? Or is it going to be, nothing? That forced me to go inside internally even more and really assess, what was really important for me. And what I realized, what felt like, at the time, was my own energy was speaking to me saying, hey, no more alcohol. Let's really clean this up, and let's get even more in touch, with your energy. So at that point, I decided, regardless of the way the tests come back, I'm not going to drink any alcohol anymore. I'm going to further clean up, further commit to the best version of myself. The tests all came back negative. They had no explanation for it, but magically, those headaches disappeared that day. And so it helped me kind of realize and confirm that there was something to this. I really needed to dive in. And I thought, well, where am I going to go with this? And so I hired a coach to help me get kind of everything organized. And I said, I really want to find an amazing job. I wasn't really loving what I was doing at the time. I started to meditate every day. I can still remember my first meditation was 10 minutes, and it felt like an eternity. If you ever want to extend your life, try meditating for 10 minutes if you haven't already. But it was something I was committed to doing, and I realized I had so many thoughts that weren't serving me going on in my head all the time, questioning, am I good enough? Can I do this? Has the best passed me by? And slowly through that process, I started to let those things dissolve and start to think about, let's quit thinking about where you're at, where you come from. Let's start looking forward and start this idea and the process of removing interference between where I was and where I ultimately wanted to be. So I really focused on stripping away the interference.
Now, were you telling anybody else about this, or were you kind of surprised what this was happening, or did you have a kind of a partner, or were you doing this battle alone?
Well, my wife certainly deserves a lot of credit for it. She had introduced me to a couple of meditations and some people to follow. She's extremely dialed in with her fitness. meditation and so forth. So I just wanted to experiment with it, try it. And then, of course, I shared these things with my coach. David Meltzer is the guy that I reached out to. And with him, I thought I need to get really serious about what it is I want. If I don't have goals, if I don't have that urge to fly, that kind of ignited vision, it'll be hard to transform. So I created what I thought were really good goals, X number of millions of dollars I wanted to make in X amount of time, and give that to him. And he's gave me some feedback that I'll never remember, and I'm always be grateful for. And he said, when we start working together, the first thing we're going to do is rip up your list. And I said, why? And he said, the moment you identify an amount of money and a specific time frame, you're immediately introducing interference. Because the moment you write it down, you now have less time, which creates more stress. So what I want to do is strip away all of those types of thinking and feeling, so there's never any interference between you and what you're ultimately capable of. So timelines, specific amounts of money, those things can always serve you really well to get rid of, and just look at, let's double what you have as quickly as possible. Because there's no timeline for as quickly as possible. That really resonated with me, and it helped ignite this idea that made sense. And if I doubled what I had, then worked at doubling it again as fast as I could, I would get better at doubling it and probably end up in a place much bigger and better than the goals that I had set out, to accomplish originally. And he told me, let's not look for a new job. Let's look at getting more present with your current job. Let's look at being the best possible person you can be right here, right now. And so I actually kept the job that I was in that I didn't think that I wanted for another couple of years, getting really good at honing in on what I'm good at, what are my real gifts, how can I be present with the people I'm helping, and see if I couldn't just do a better job at being me at that point in time. And that practice has served me so incredibly well since that point in time. I've now launched 2 new businesses. I have Segway Growth, which is a bit of a play on words. It's SEGWEY. Those happen to be my initials, SEG, but it stands for Simple, Easy Growth. And I learned 2 very important things as I've gone through my 30-year corporate career, is that too many companies try to grow for the sake of growing, much like me wanting the X millions of dollars in a certain timeline. It just sounded like that's what I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to go do it. But without being really intentional about the path, what it is you're going to do to get there, where do you really want to be, how do you want to be thinking, feeling, and acting, anything can sound like a good idea, and anything can sound like a bad idea. It gives you very poorly structured parameters for how you're going to get there. And I would also hear companies talk about change is really hard. And I had this kind of gut feeling that was wrong. Change is not hard. Change without alignment is really hard. Which got me thinking, if I could help companies get really crystal clear on where it is they want to go, not in the context of how much money they want to make, but the way they want their company to be thinking, feeling, acting, and then identify where they want to take that, and then create absolute alignment around where they want to go with a crystal clear vision, it would become easy. And that's the idea behind Simple, Easy Growth. And it's working, phenomenally well. What I've learned in this process is when you get really clear about the way you want to be thinking, the way you want to be feeling, and then you align your actions around those things, like feeling great every day when you wake up. Like that idea that I can't wait to get up and live life, as opposed to worrying all night about what's coming the next day, is an amazing way to live. And what a great first goal, instead of how are we going to get that $100 million, And so again, you're eliminating all of that interference, which leads me to my second business that we launched, which is a company called Life Peels. And Life Peels has to do with the story of the Statue of David, which really quickly is the city of Florence bought this slab of marble. They wanted someone to do a sculpture. They commissioned a bunch of artists, and they all came back and said, this marble is not good enough. I can't work with this. And so it sat in the city, town square for 40 years in the elements, getting worse and worse and worse and weathering. And then Michelangelo came along, 40 years later at the age of 21 or 22. He said, I'd like to take a crack, at this sculpture that you guys want. They said, have at it. Everyone says it's a bad piece of marble. It can't be worked with. And he slowly started stripping away the bad bits of marble and quickly, created what many consider to be the best sculpture ever created. And when he unveiled it, a lady came up to him and said, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. How did you create it? And he said, I didn't create that. That was there the whole time. I simply had to strip away the layers and let it come out. And so that's sort of the metaphor behind life peels that we're all many times told we're this 40-year-old slab of marble that is not of enough quality. And it can be true because we've gathered so many ways of thinking and constructs that we can feel like we're not good enough. But if we start the process of stripping away that's not serving us and let the best version of ourselves emerge, not by adding on 20 new things to do and, making our lives more difficult, but just start to address the bad thoughts that we have that don't serve us well, the bad feelings that we have that don't serve us well. And then slowly start to transition into the actions that are going to take our life in a trajectory that's tied in with our own personal life force, those things in our true self that really serve us well, that we're here to be our best version of ourselves. When you tie into that, what I have found, change is really easy. So the more in tune you are with your true self or your own, life energy, you realize this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is easy. I want more of this. Which is very different from using the things that society tell us we should be good at. You should be doing this. You should be doing it this way. If you find those things very difficult, it's probably not aligned with your life energy. And that's why it feels so difficult. So we're on a mission to help people really take the time out to identify really clearly how they want the best version of themselves to emerge, get really in touch with and take full accountability for the way they're thinking, the way they're feeling, and then help them resolve those things so that they can get in touch with and let the best version of themselves emerge. And so I'm right there in that process. The one amazing thing that is happening right now, as we're talking about all of this, is more and more as I'm in tune with my own life energy, one of the things that's becoming very apparent to me is that to make all of this happen, I have to learn how to really relax, keep my breath as slow as possible, not overreact to anything, not judge anything, and let this company and these companies emerge, become more in tune with my own intuition. And that's been the hardest part of this challenge, which is do less. But when you do it inspired. So I wait for these moments of inspiration. My nature is take action. Get those 14 stairs, do your 100 toe lifts, and get cracking. And I've had to really retrain myself, my body, my mind, and my feeling that not everything is worth your time and energy. So wait for those moments of inspiration when you know this is what's really important. Get 100% present and then really pour yourself in to doing those things exceptionally well, not doing a lot of things haphazardly just to stay busy. And I think the one challenge that I issue to people, a lot of people talk about these challenges, running 100 miles, hiking Mount Everest, doing these, kind of amazing things. The hardest thing in life is to dedicate yourself to not doing things, to sit in quiet, to let yourself be filled with inspiration before you take action. But when you train yourself and go against what society is telling you have to do, which is stay busy, stay active, and you get really comfortable with the idea of being present, amazing things start to emerge. And I'm seeing that happen and really transform the trajectory of not only our company, um, not only my clients, but myself. And I'm a much better boss, a much better father, a much better husband, a much better friend, and a much better um, human being.
This is more than fascinating. It is inspiring. Some of the same practices that you've talked about have been something that I'm trying to do as a type A person.
Yeah,
and finding, just even the idea of taking 10 minutes was hard, but just taking that full hour early in the morning.
yeah,
And they say, oh, read, pray. I say, no, I'm just going to sit here and
yeah,
see what happens.
right.
Yeah, and I would very say so very much, Sandy. I would love eventually for you to do just exactly feel inspired when it happens. This story is inspiring because what it causes me to do and what it's going to cause people to watch this to say is that wonderful word, tell me more, help me
Yeah,
more. So, as people used to say about Michael Jordan, as you did, I want to be like Mike. I want to
that's
fly.
right.
That was
That's
the whole story about Michael Jordan. Can I be like Mike? And
right.
that whole thing is a part of it. So please, bring us to it. Bring us to it. You've inspired us. Now just tell us how we can connect with you and what's doing in your life and your business. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There's two really easy ways to get in touch with me if you want to learn any more. Just want to have a conversation about maybe where you're at and what you would ultimately like to accomplish. The two best ways, I'm the only Sande Golgart, SandeGolgart on LinkedIn. So that's the
Probably in
easy
the whole world, maybe.
way in the whole world. But also sandegolgart.com is another great place. And we have a lot of free resources and things to dabble in. But just reach out, get in touch. You can schedule time with me, and I'll hold space for us to really dive in and talk about exactly what's going on and see where it is that you want to go and explain the process, because it might not make complete sense. It might just sound or trigger something that says, I don't know what he's saying, but it's something's telling me I need to be in touch. And that's what I would tell people to listen to. And if that's speaking to you, that's the kind of inspired action that you should take.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just add one thing to this. I've had some conversations with Sandy before. I'll just say this: trust him, trust him, trust him. He will do well for you. Thank you so very, very much. We'll talk again. Best and blessings. And to those of you who are watching, thinking, praying, wondering, truly, life is a bit chaotic. The world is a bit challenging right now. You can't do much about that, but there can be a much better you starting now. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. It's always really fun to do these.